So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the high point, I guess, of the conference, which is the roundtable discussion among Greek American and Greek business leaders about how to put Greece back on the global investor agenda. My name is Athanasios Ellis. I'm a long-time correspondent in the US, New York, and Washington. And now I'm back and forth between Greece and the US, so I have a feeling about the issue. I'm not an investor, of course, but at least I have dealt with many of the people here. And actually, I know most of them. They probably don't know me, but I've seen them in New York, in Washington, in different events. Today is a very difficult day for another reason, for the Greek economy, because you all know the Prime Minister is in Brussels. We all follow minute by minute what's happening, so because of that, the economy minister, Mr. Stathakis, and the president of the National Bank, Mrs. Katseli, were not able to join us, but we have the good fortune to have here the General Secretary of the Economy Ministry for Strategic Investments, Mr. Lois Labrianidis, who is at the end of the panel there. And although he's not a minister, or maybe not yet, he might be in a better position to answer specific questions that might come up. If Greece is to ever make a comeback, a major source of potential investment will come definitely from abroad, and in that context, one would expect the Greek American community to take a lead. And when we're talking about investors, we are talking about people like the one that are next to me. So these Greek American business leaders on the panel are people who deal with hundreds of millions, in some cases billions of dollars. So I think we would be wise to listen to what they say and maybe to what their advice might be. Let me present them, although I apologize to them or to you because you probably know them from the previous panel, but quickly, John Calamos, founder and chairman, CEO of Calamos Investments from Chicago. I know he's also the power behind the Hellenic Museum in Chicago, which is led by a personal friend of mine from DC. John Koudounis, president and CEO of Mizuho Securities, the U.S. investment banking subsidiary of one of the largest financial institutions in the world. Dennis Mehiel, managing member of 4M Capital. He's also a politician. I've seen him be part of the Democratic National Committee. He was a candidate for lieutenant governor of the state of New York. Dean Metropoulos, chairman of Metropoulos and Company, a private equity investor in building, restructuring, and repositioning businesses. Again, something that might be of interest to most of us or people who want to invest in Greece. And I will go to the other side. We have Stelios Zavvos, who is walking, I guess, or wearing both shoes, the Greek and Greek American. He is the founder and CEO of Zeus Capital Managers, which engages in private equity, real estate acquisitions, and management. And as many people among us know him as the founder and president of the Harvard Business School Club of Greece. And in this capacity, he has brought many well-known personalities who have talked to us about the economy and other subjects. In a similar situation, we also find, meaning between Greek and Greek American, we also find Nikos Bornozis, who for many years has been organizing conferences like this, and he joins us on the panel. And he has, because of these conferences, I guess, a very interesting insight to share with us. And we also have Andreadis, chairman of the Greek Tourism Confederation, Konstantinos Bitsios, a former diplomat, and former director of the Office of the President of the Republic, who has just become Executive Vice Chairman of the Hellenic Federation of Enterprises, and Panos Papazoglou, Managing Partner at Ernst & Young Greece. Now, given the number of participants, it might be practical if they could start not with long speeches or comments, but trying to choose like a couple, 1, 2, maybe 3 points they really care about or issues that they feel are really important for somebody who thinks of investing in Greece. I can think of some, like the rule of law, a stable tax system, making the risk analysis, but I guess they will talk to us about these. Let me start with the Greek Americans, and let me start with Mr. Calamos, since he's next. Point, say, a couple of points that you feel are really important if you are to invest in Greece. What should somebody look for or want to consider?
So to comment on, we have been looking at investments in Greece for the past few years, and obviously, as an investor, we're looking for opportunities, and one of the factors that discouraged our investment over the past 18 months or 2 years was the uncertainty of the political climate that we have. So we worked on it for a long time, but the uncertainty of the political climate was one of the reasons we did not invest at that particular time. So that is, I think, a key element. You want to understand the rules. So when you're making that decision on the investment, that the rules don't change overnight. And so that was very critical. We do feel there's some opportunities here. We come here 2 or 3 times a year. We continue to look for opportunities, but I think we need to feel that there's some stabilization and some certainty of the rules going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Metropoulos.
I think I would echo what John said. I think you need political, I shouldn't even talk about stability, it's more about predictability. So you do know the rules of the game. In addition to that, I think we want the legal system. I had sent in a team about 3 or 4 years ago with some very bright financial people from London and New York about looking at the opportunities and how we might participate, not specifically. They came back and they said, it's just not right for us because the legal system is not one that allows for balancing justice and opportunity in a fairly prompt and quick basis. So that part of it was very important. The education is here, all of that. Probably we are looking at opportunities. I did, in fact, look at one with John about 2 years ago, and we're looking at one even now. Probably for me, the only way I would consider something is with a local partner, folks like I mentioned earlier, other private equity guys like Zeus Capital or Global Finance. They're on the ground, they understand the resolution of issues, they understand the management part of it, the transformation, because invariably we get involved with businesses that we like to transform, and transformation happens quickly, not over 5 years or 7 years, it happens. So I would probably consider such an investment with a good local partner. And most important in my life is 2 things that have guided my life and I like to operate in. Transparency is very important. Integrity is very important. There's no point in having money because it doesn't bring you a lot of pleasure. It frankly has diminishing returns. It's the excitement of doing it, but transparency and integrity are very critical. So if I had a couple partners like that I could work with locally that understands how to maneuver in the local environment, that's what would cause me to invest.
Thank you. Mr. Koudounis.
Thank you. I think anybody needs to look at and reach inside themselves and figure out what are their risk boundaries and what is their risk appetites and what are the potential returns for the risks. And when you evaluate a situation or a country, and when we at the bank, we have a huge portfolio that we look at, and we look at different parts of the world and where we're going to invest. Our loan portfolio is close to $1 trillion, and we separate the world in 3 different places, in the Americas, in Europe, in this region, and in Asia. And we look at, number one, we have to look at the economic risks, right? What is the ability for, economically, for these people to pay money back? And another thing that we have to look at is the political risk. What is the willingness of the people to to pay back as well. And it's really important as you make an investment in a country or a region or a continent. And it takes time. You have to have confidence in this. We're seeing a lot of movement now. People are chasing yield. The markets have shrunk. The markets' yields are diminishing. So people and money is following a lot more yield or looking for a lot more yield. And to get more yield, you have to take more risks. And so it always follows that pattern. Now, there is obviously a lot of yield now if you participate in Greece, but you have to have the appetite to take that kind of risk. And a lot of the major institutions are not there yet, especially with this underlying economic, political conditions. But that will pass, hopefully sooner rather than later. Working for my headquarters, which is in Japan, it took 20-odd years for their country to start to come out of a deflationary arena. And there's been a tremendous amount of turnover in the political administration too. Now that politics have become less of a burden and they're working together with the economics, things are changing and they're starting to make huge investments. And that's hopefully at some point will turn the corner. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to start going up. And then people will start investing here in Greece with the opportunities to look at the risk, and hopefully the returns are at the right proportion in order to go forward.
Thank you. Mr. Mehiel.
Okay. Well, I'll be brief. It seems to me that if there's a question whether Greece is going to have a euro as its currency or a drachma with an unknown valuation in the international currency markets, so long as that uncertainty persists, I would suspect that there can't be significant international capital flowing to Greece. It just can't come. Are there, individual knows people in Greece, has a particular opportunity, and decides to pursue a transaction? Of course, those things are going to happen, but I don't know how it gets to scale until the world has a degree of certitude that it's the euro or it's not the euro. And if it's not the euro, I suspect there would be a period of time for that to sort itself out. And until those things happen, we can talk about it, but I don't see the opportunity for large-scale international capital to flow here.
Unfortunately, that debate has been going on for quite a few years. This between the Grexit enigma. Let's hope that it's dealt with soon. Nikos.
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to say that technically speaking, there are always investors under any kind of scenario, because there are investors who have a very high risk appetite. However, the higher risk profile of the investment, the fewer investors who are willing to invest, and the higher the return, the risk premium they're expecting. So I will go back to the point that Dennis made. If this uncertainty does not end soon, what will happen is ultimately some kind of investment may flow into Greece, but we will have to sell our assets at very, very low prices because we will need some capital inflow. So the more that we sustain the uncertainty, the more we depreciate the assets that this nation has at its disposal. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Nick. Mr. Zavvos.
Thank you. At this panel, I feel very much at home, spending half of my time in New York and half of my time in Southeast Europe and investing in both places. So I wanted to say that I have a great appreciation for both the investment community and the culture of the investment community and the business acumen that exists in Greece. And I would like to take a lot of the thoughts to present a kind of a very brief conceptual framework for what makes the investors to come and invest in Greece, where there are so many opportunities globally, and that could be also a place for interaction also for the government, for the public to hear and understand what makes investors come to a specific place and make the investment decision. And I wanted to start, first of all, these days in Athens, I had many meetings with a lot of hedge funds, which are doing mainly speculative investments, government bonds, currencies, cities. This is not what I would like to talk briefly about. I would like to present you the investments in real economy, the assets that people will invest long-term on a strategic perspective, where you have value creation, prospects for growth, and where they need the profitable exit strategy. If you really see the conceptual perspective, there are three elements to invest. You need predictability and stability in three elements: economy, politics, society. Let's start with the positive aspect of the society. In the Greek society, we have an underlying but important change. There is a wide consensus that the private enterprises must be empowered to lead the growth efforts. It's very interesting. When they made research in 2009, only 40% said we're going to go out of the crisis, exit of the crisis from the private sector. In 2014, we have 75 to 80% people who believe that we need to get out of the crisis through the private enterprise. The same thing, we need stability in the economy, as Dennis said before, and also we need stability in the political side. One of the investors that they were saying, we need a political stability. We are not sure if a reform will bring down the government. It's important to know that the government is here to stay. So I want to address not the fiscal aspect, because we do need economic growth to have more taxes, to generate employment, but I want to go beyond. This will be resolved hopefully in the next few weeks or months. I want to go to the real issue, why an investor will come in Greece and invest, and this has to do clearly with the structural reforms. This is the framework I want to give here, that even a lot of the German economists wonder, if we were bringing down the labor unit costs through the austerity measures by 26%, I was talking to all of these people, they were saying, we will have export growth. We did have a labor unit cost reduction of 26%, and we did not have the export growth. Why so? It's the structural reforms. 4 of them. The one of them is we need the permitting, simplification and acceleration of the permitting. How to start quickly a new business, the permits to operate. Most importantly, the environmental permits in Greece are a major issue. Just in 1 year, we had over 21,000 files in 2010, while in United Kingdom, you only had 334 environmental application files. And you can see that lately, the progress has been made, the time has been reduced, but bureaucracy still stays above the European average. And you can see several uncertainty issues that come through this bureaucracy, the austere Palace investment, the economy investment, and how many years it took for the Costa Navarino to happen. A very important element when we decide an investment in a country is the predictable tax rate. If I don't know what is the tax rate, how am I going to create a business plan? How am I going to know what's the exit strategy and how am I going to operate? Predictable tax rate, stable and predictable. Together, of course, which was mentioned before, the fairness in the collection system. Now, many times we decide to go to a country to invest because of the rendering of justice, the legal system. If I know that in the specific country the princes will get a very different treatment than the commoners, most probably I will not go to invest there. So why I'm saying that, in Greece we had about 400,000 cases in the administrative courts in 1 year. This is unheard of. We are the 3rd worst country in a sense in delaying in getting decisions on the legal system. So it's very important for the investor. Permitting, taxation, legal system. And comes to the fourth now, which was so much discussed before, and we need to put it in this frame. It has to do innovation, the ecosystem of the innovation. In November, at the Harvard Business School, we brought here Nobel winner Ned Phelps, and we presented the idea that a country cannot grow without innovation. Innovation in every aspect of life, or not only in the high tech, in your everyday life. Innovation where we can help the young generation to bring the startups, to bring the new enterprises. What is the problem these days? Brain drainage. We have the highest percentage of young people migrating from any European country. We have over 200,000 young people living in the country, and we have 76% of the young people in Greece say they want to migrate. This needs to be addressed. We need the ecosystem. The ecosystem comes out of the angel investments. We need much more venture capitalists to give money to create this ecosystem. And we need incubators. We have 2 or 3 incubators. The egg, the Dutch government, these things need to happen. So I want to repeat, permitting, taxation, legal rendering, ecosystem, fundamental issues for us to invest. This message has to pass. And as we said before, the Greeks have, with the Greek Americans, a very big common point, the DNA of the entrepreneurship and the acumen. We see the Greek Americans who have a remarkable success. We need to make the structural reforms so we can attract this investment to support the economy and help the society to change. Thank you.
Now we're moving to the clearly Greek side of the panel. Mr. Andreadis.
Thank you. Although the day is not a very good day for optimism and for investment, I will try to look in the more medium to long-term possibilities and opportunities that Greek tourism can generate. We had a record year in 2014 with 24 million arrivals. This is a growth of 22%, about triple as fast as our competitors in the Eurozone. So clearly Islamophobia and the North Africa situation is not the only driver. And this followed a 15% growth from 13 to 12. Now Greek tourism represents a little above 20% of the Greek GDP. Our projections for 2015 were for 25 million visitors. We have to see if this is possible. And total direct income of 14.5 billion. Despite the fact that a lot of negotiations are happening this moment about VAT in tourism and how this can grow disproportionately and affect adversely business to Greece. Looking into the more longer term picture, what we see is that Greece is the 5th largest destination in the Med, is the 15th largest tourist country in the world. It has created last year 14 billion euros of demand. We expect 3 billion more of demand to be generated by 2018. And clearly, as a lot of investment is missing in the last year or two, growth will be above capacity. So that there is surely a scope for investment in tourism, and returns can be very good. Obviously, the fundamentals that the speakers before explained have to be in place. Without that, we cannot proceed. However, let's always remember that the opportunities are there in the mid to longer term, and I'm very optimistic. There's a lot of interest in Greek tourism, and it's going to happen in the coming years. Greece, from the point of competitiveness, All its economy is below, I think, 70th or 80th position globally, but in tourism is 30-something. And this is because of the crisis. If we didn't have problems with the banking system and with issues related to the recession, we would be within the 20 more competitive tourism economies in the world. So we are not below the income of the Greeks is in position 30 something, and our competitiveness in tourism is higher than that, which is a good sign. I think therefore the fundamentals are there. We have issues to overcome that are current, based obviously on the agreement of the government with its creditors and the VAT in tourism, which obviously is threatened by disproportionate increases. Being the only economy that is driving, the only sector of the economy driving the Greek economy, obviously is going to share the biggest part of the burden of the taxation, as long as it is not getting disproportionately out of competitive rates of other countries. So we are waiting to see where finally we will end up in the next couple of days to reevaluate our position. However, the fundamentals will always be there, and if a mistake happens today, in VAT, I'm sure within a year it will be corrected again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bitsios.
Thank you very much. You asked us to be brief and sort of name the two preconditions or two of the main elements that would create the climate for investment in Greece. The first, of course, is restoration of economic stability. If you don't conclude the deal, if you don't conclude the negotiations, obviously you will not be able to create an investment climate. Greece needs to be a strong player in the Eurozone and in the European Union. I think that's very obvious. And I would say this is important for individuals, but it's also important for countries. It's our comparative advantage. Investors seek currency stability, and they also they seek a road towards Europe. So either be it, and even for big investors at the moment, for example, China or maybe Russia, I think this is quite important as well. So I wouldn't have any illusions that they would wish or want us anywhere else from that. I think the second condition, of course, is structural reform. Now, when you talk of structural reforms, it may mean different things to different people. And when I want to talk about structural reform, it's not to repeat what needs to be done, because everybody knows what needs to be done. Up until now, I think that governments have tackled this issue horizontally. They've taken horizontal measures, which basically do not address the fundamentals of the issue. They tend to sweep the problem under the carpet. What I would be talking about is you need to re-examine from scratch the whole public sector. I mean, every law, every regulation, everything that has to do with the public sector. I believe that the results would be astounding. You would get a productive public sector, and of course you would liberate completely the private sector, which is what you want to do. Just imagine the benefits. Imagine the benefits that if you're assessing or you're re-examining all regulations and you scrap literally hundreds of thousands of regulations that you don't need. Imagine if you create a tax system which is transparent, which is long-term. We've had, I think, 10 different tax systems or laws in the past 5 years. Now, how can anybody invest in a country with the law regulations changing the way they do? You need definitely to revise the judicial proceedings. You need to create, I think, a specialized court that will quickly solve the long issues of potential investors who want to invest in Greece and take years to clear. Well, sometimes there can be legitimate concerns, but they need to be cleared quickly. So I think that mainly these are the two issues that I would see briefly as you asked me to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Papazoglou.
Yes, thank you. Some simple thoughts on my side, because most issues have been tackled already. I think talking to people outside Greece, and especially entrepreneurs, what I'm hearing often, and I believe most of you are hearing, is that Greece is a very nice place to live, but not a place to do business. Now, what we're doing as a nation is we failed to attract them to live in Greece, to start with, number one. And number two, we haven't initiated discussion what we should be doing to attract businesses. Now, in every turnaround, and we are facing a significant challenge in our country, and we should be starting the dialogue of the turnaround of the next day. Usually, to my mind, there are always three questions that should be raised and addressed in every turnaround exercise. Number one, what we should stop doing, what we're doing wrong so far. Number two, what are we doing well and we should continue doing it. And number three, what we should start doing in order to attract businesses. In the first question, what we should stop doing, I think, and this has been said already, the regulatory environment is changing all the time in Greece. I mean, people in business feel that, it's kind of a moving sand. The feeling sometimes is that the only mission that ministers have in Greece, irrespective of governments, even ministers within the same government, that they should be changing whatever the previous minister did in the same position. And we're seeing this a lot. Instead of improving things, we're just changing things. Sometimes we're backtracking on reforms already initiated, like, the reforms of the educational system. We went back to the 80s. What we should start doing, I think, and this has been said as well, we need reforms, but first of all, we need a vision. We don't have a vision right now in Greece. What should be the next day? How we should be moving in order for this country to start, the real sustainable growth. There's simply things that we can do. And most of them have been said, just changing the judicial system. I mean, in which country, for a financial conflict to be concluded finally in a court, we need more than 10 years? As just an example. Obviously, we need to address the oligopolies. We have monopolies and oligopolies in this country, starting from professions to industries, to sectors. We need to increase research and development as a percentage of our GDP. We're probably the lowest in the Eurozone, among the lowest in Europe. We need a stable taxation system. Sometimes I'm hearing people saying that, we're not attracting investments because our income taxes are very high. So, who can explain to me why Bulgaria, with probably the lowest tax rate in Europe, doesn't have attracted many investments? So it's not only about the rate. I'm very much in favor of a low rate, of a flat rate actually, but for different reasons. And the reasons is not just to attract investments, because investments are attracted by the things that I've said before, to my mind. The low tax rate has the benefit of tackling corruption very much, making financial audits much easier, and obviously have less administrative cost, which means even for the companies, it's much more expensive to tax evade rather than to, pay the 10 or 15% tax. Finally, what we should continue doing, what we're doing well, we should continue doing. The main asset of our nation is our the human asset. We have probably the most educated population in the world. I think most of you probably have heard Professor Ioannidis from Stanford University proving that per capita we have the highest percentage of very educated people. Unfortunately, the top scientists, the significant percentage of the top scientists, over 80%, are outside Greece. We need to continue investing in the education of our next generations. We need to focus on producing educated scientists and educated people, because that's the main asset. Without this, we cannot expect a better next day for Greece. Thank you.
Thank you. Until now, it was the easy part for the 10 of us. We might ask questions, express visions, present goals. The last speaker will be the one who will start answering, which is the difficult part. So the floor goes to the representative from the ministry, the General Secretary, Mr. Andreadis.
Yes. I want to thank you for the invitation. I would like to apologize on behalf of Minister Stathakis that he wasn't able to come. I have been told the very last minute to come here, thus I'm afraid that I'm not prepared to give a speech. What I only want to say is that we are going to introduce pretty soon a new development law so needed from the Greek economy. I must tell you that there are quite a lot of foreign and Greek investors that they are keen to invest. They come and visit me quite often in my office. They just wait things to settle down first. As they said before, I mean, they want the negotiations to conclude first and then they will actually invest. So we are working on writing up the new investment law. And for that matter, we are already holding informal meetings with business federations and particular businesses. I'm afraid that I'm not ready to prepare the new investment law here. I only want to point out 4 things. First, in this investment law, we would like to make sure, with this investment law, we would like to make sure that the country will move on the value chain so as to produce products and services with high value added. Secondly, we are going to put quite a lot of emphasis on Greece's comparative advantage, that is, as has been said already, its educated human capital. So what we have in mind is to make sure that we will stop somehow or even reverse the brain drain. Thirdly, with this investment law, the emphasis will not be anymore on grants. Fourth, and finally, I understand that the investment law on its own cannot put Greece back on the development track. What's more important is the ecosystem. We need many changes in the business environment, in the ecosystem, and most of them have been already mentioned by the previous speakers. Thank you very much.
We're too many up here, so let me go fast. Is there something that somebody heard and that created a question that could be answered from the panel, maybe from the ministry? Is somebody concerned about something? Did somebody hear something that made him or her, but I guess him, when I ask the minister or the general secretary something about taxes, about the government's intentions, about nope. Something. One of the speakers from this side mentioned joint ventures or local partners. Are you interested in asking the Greek side on their experience with?
Athanasios, that's exactly what I want to talk about. Dean was absolutely right. When you go into an environment where you have lengthy legal processes and you have a volatility in many of the systems, it's extremely important to choose a local partner. And that there comes, of course, the ability to evaluate correctly, to have the due diligence, but it's fundamental. And when we have people like Dean Metropoulos, who has been such a major force in the food industry worldwide, I mean, and to us it's a great, I would say, privilege for Greece to come and invest, but obviously with a joint venture, because the local partners are essential in order to be able to establish a long-term profitable presence. That's a very important point.
You spoke about local companies. What would you, or in general an American investor, but you specifically, look for from this company or this person in Greece? To give you some insight, or, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Local partner?
Oh. Why would you look for one? I mean,
And
specifically in Greece, given its...
Many, many reasons. I mean, in any market that you don't know and you're not that familiar with, that is different than perhaps your core business, there's a lot of things. You look at their interpretation of the local financial statements as one. You look at the local understanding of dealing with employees, unions, pensions, that. You look at the local expertise for pricing, the market. How do you market a product in that particular market? Their uniquenesses to targeting certain consumers with certain products. As an outside investor, let me say this, Greece is not immune from the global promotional and marketing, so I think I would have some insights, but I would rely on a local partner to give me a much better understanding of the financial statements, of the environment I'm operating in, the pricing, the employee management, the management structure, dealing with the government and all the regulations. Of course, that would discourage me to begin with. However, let's assume we can get over that. My local partner would navigate turbulence that I don't fully understand. So, but more important than all of that, γιατί δεν θέλεις πονοκέφαλους, you want someone who's got integrity, professionalism, and it sort of has an international reputation and an international way of doing business. You can be the cleverest, the smartest, the shrewdest person in the world. That may not suit me because I may not understand your orientation and your culture. So that's what I would look for.
And to follow up, maybe another person would like to answer, how do you choose the local partner? I mean, that's another issue, because there's a downside to that, I guess, right? If you choose the wrong person.
I could touch upon that. I think that, like we all said, the environment right now is not great. It hasn't been great, and it's a non-starter, unfortunately. And as you mentioned, taxes and everything else, Stelios, is very important. You have to have stability. But once you get through that, one of the reasons that we're here, and we've been coming here for the last few years, is to get to know possible local partners. In relationships, you look at balance sheets, you look at financials all the time. But relations are really important, and reputation is really important. In our industries, your word is everything. And so when the floodgates open, I think that for people coming here and getting to know people, it's very important. And spending some time, face time, getting to know the culture, getting to know the industries that you might be looking at. That's how you choose your people. Even when you look at a big global conglomerate, and I work for one of the largest financial institutions, we have people in boots on the ground all over the planet, in almost every country that there's any kind of commerce. And it takes time before we start investing heavily in any particular market. Even in the United States, we just made a major acquisition with Royal Bank of Scotland of the Americas. It took time for them to get the local management, for them to get comfortable as to what we're doing. Even in the best, probably arguably the best economy in the world for the last few years. But you have to get comfortable with the people on the ground to do that. And a lot of that is reputational, but most of it is face-to-face.
Yeah, I would make one comment if I could. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, still on. I think the criteria with which we evaluate investing alongside someone that we would call a partner is common to all countries, to all cultures. I mean, so I'm investing in Los Angeles. My headquarters is in New York. I've got a local partner. And the things that I was looking for in that local partner, and we start right away with the cardinal values that Mr. Metropoulos mentioned, which is integrity, and then he also said earlier, transparency, the ability to fully understand what's going on. You get to reputation, all of those things. But if we're talking about finding a partner in an economy where Greece is at the moment, all of these things, I mean, those requirements are on steroids. You really would have to feel extremely comfortable that you have somebody who is competent in the local environment, understands how it works, and they have integrity, and you just feel secure. You can make a mistake. We all make mistakes. But I don't think there's a lot of difference in what we would be looking for here versus anywhere else.
I'd like to make a different point. And I want to build on the point of Mr. Andreadis, who looks at it long term. I think if we look at Greece long term, frankly, we have to see a world of opportunities. Greece has wonderful people, has tremendous assets. And I think that we can classify these opportunities in two categories. On one hand, you have a number of very good Greek companies. In the previous panel before, Nicola Samaras was telling exactly about how he's investing in Greece as a major private equity fund. We had Global Finance telling us how they're investing in growth Greek companies. And I can judge also from the quality of the meetings that these gentlemen had while they were in Greece. You had a very high number of high-quality companies seeking their advice or seeking alliances and opening up to global markets. So you have a number of very good Greek companies with potential to do very well in the global markets. On the other hand, and that's what I'd like to point, you have a number of companies that are problematic. And I want to go back to what Dennis said. Never waste a crisis. So these companies are problematic, but these companies can be restructured. They can be brought back to health. And I think a number of investors, either from Greece or from abroad, can look at these companies as the potential for restructuring and putting them back on the right track. Now, we have the tendency, or some people have the tendency, to look at this restructuring as a socially damaging, if you want, exercise. However, I think restructuring, if done properly, can have a very positive effect on society because it helps to bring back into the economy healthy companies that create sustainable jobs. You have more investment coming in, and that creates growth in the economy. What Dean said before, that he had to buy a company that had 13 plants and he put it down to 3, at the end of the day, you had a number of people who got jobs in a company that had sustainability, long-term potential, and that I think creates the multiplier effect in the economy. But we just need to have the right structure for this. So that's all I wanted to say.
I think the time has come to open the discussion also to the floor. If somebody from the audience wants to ask a question, would be welcome to do so. Okay. You sure? Okay, the gentleman. Δεν έχουμε μικρόφωνο.
We give the microphone to the gentleman.
Μπορώ να μιλήσω στα ελληνικά? Ωραία. Νιώθω πιο άνετα.
Παρακαλώ όμως ερώτηση και όχι statement, αν θέλετε.
Εντάξει. Νίκος Γερασίμου λέγομαι, είμαι ναυτιλιακός δικηγόρος. Εμείς οι ναυτιλιακοί δικηγόροι είμαστε κυρίως στο χώρο του Πειραιά. Και βεβαίως, γνωρίζοντας την ναυτιλία, ξέρουμε και από άλλες επενδύσεις. Έχω την αίσθηση ότι σήμερα στην Ελλάδα δεν γίνεται τίποτα. Αυτά που ακούσαμε από όλους Βεβαίως είναι ωραίες ευχές, είναι ωραίες σκέψεις, αλλά έχω την αίσθηση ότι δεν μιλάμε για την Ελλάδα. Η ερώτησή μου είναι, σε μια χώρα που σήμερα δεν ξέρουμε τι νόμισμα θα έχουμε αύριο, για ποιες επενδύσεις μιλάμε? Έχω την αίσθηση ότι ακόμα και ο εκπρόσωπος της κυβέρνησης ήρθε σήμερα ανέτοιμος να μας δώσει μια άποψη για το τι γίνεται, τι κάνουμε. Δεν ξέρουμε, ο κύριος Ανδρέας Ανδρεάδης, που εκπροσωπεί ένα μεγάλο κομμάτι της ελληνικής οικονομίας, δεν ξέρει αύριο πώς θα ξυπνήσει, με 6,5%, με 13%, με 23%. Για ποιες επενδύσεις μιλάμε? Δεν γίνεται τίποτα στην Ελλάδα και πρέπει να το δούμε κατάματα. Το μόνο πράγμα που ήθελα να ρωτήσω, και δεν θέλω να κάνω statement...
Δεν θέλω να είμαι αγενής, αλλά αν έχετε την ευγενή καλοσύνη, ποια είναι η ερώτηση?
Η ερώτηση είναι, πιστεύετε όλοι σας ότι η μόνη επένδυση, ο μόνος τρόπος σήμερα που η Ελλάδα μπορεί να πάει μπροστά από επένδυση είναι η ναυτιλία, η οποία δεν έχει καμία σχέση με την Ελλάδα, η οποία είναι διεθνοποιημένος κλάδος και είναι ο μόνος κλάδος ο οποίος, εάν το πιστεύετε αυτό, μπορεί στην Ελλάδα να μας βγάλει ασπροπρόσωπους. Μιλάμε για την παγκόσμια οικονομία. Διότι η αίσθησή μου είναι ότι στην Ελλάδα καμία επένδυση δεν μπορεί να γίνει. Επομένως, είναι αυτή εσείς, can you share this idea that shipping is the only industry that can be established and fulfilling all the prospects worldwide? Thank you.
It's a little maximalistic approach, but this is a democracy. So, do you feel shipping is the only? I mean, do you have any experience with investing? Did you look into areas other than shipping, or maybe shipping, that made you optimistic, pessimistic? I want to just broaden the question a little bit. If you want to, if you feel that shipping is the only area that one should look to invest in, I guess, since the rest of the Greek economy is not functioning well given the instability and the situation with the currency. I don't know, shipping, but that's the question was about shipping. I mean, are you guys interested in shipping? I don't know. That's...
Yeah. I was in shipping a few years ago, 8 years ago. In fact, one of our young executives is here. Shipping is right now is an interesting time. I think bulk shipping is doing very well. But I don't want to get into the shipping industry. Shipping cannot be the only industry. I mean, in fact, dry cargo shipping has been very difficult in the past few years. So like every other business, it merits its own analysis and understanding and risk approach. But there's so many other businesses that are inherent to Greece. Tourism is a phenomenal industry. Think about tourism in Greece. It can affect everything. Just much bigger business. And besides, shipping is wonderful for the very oligopolistic group of folks that are in it. It doesn't feed the masses. It doesn't provide mass opportunities in Greece. It's wonderful to be in shipping, and you're all offshore, as was my company. But there's a lot more. It's tourism. It's agricultural exports. You can create a magnificent brand around Mediterranean diets and brand them from Greece. Call it Santorini and export in a major way. I mean, the world is very receptive. I was in China not that long ago. They give you the word, they understand the Mediterranean diet. People talk about Ikaria. Ikaria, ποιος ξέρει που είναι Ikaria, έτσι. But βεβαίως, yet they talk about Ikaria. There's something about. So the agricultural export business is huge, but it's very fragmented. It needs to be consolidated under and marketed as a brand. So there's many, many opportunities that I think merit consideration and investment. And shipping is certainly a very good one. It's been good to Greece for a lot of years. But there's a lot more industries than just shipping that I think provide opportunities. Sorry.
By the way, can I add, next week in New York, there is the Fancy Food Show. It's one of the major food shows in the U.S. And I heard that the Greek delegation that will go to New York this year will be one of the largest. So that exactly corroborates what Dennis is saying.
Please.
Well, statement that I would agree with. countries have ups and downs. There are people here producing, there are people who are selling, there are people here who are exporting. Some in a more difficult position than others. But that is not the picture of the country, and that is definitely not the picture of the country that we want to give abroad. And I don't think that this is also the result of what we heard today. You analyze problems, you seek solutions, but this is the best parcel of land in the whole area. The opportunities are here, go out and seek them. And this is definitely not the message that we should be passing to the younger generation. Now, maybe my generation did not do the best job, but this is definitely not a message that I would want to pass to the younger generations. Thank you.
You may well know, most of us, that the McKinsey study indicated very clearly the best opportunities for investment in Greece, starting from real estate, touristic development, food processing, agricultural production. These are the alternative, and so these are essential. When it comes into shipping, it has a very speculative nature. I sit on the board of one of the biggest dry bulk companies in the world, and I can tell you it's very speculative, and it's not a long-term investment, and it's not a Greek investment. It's a kind of a global type of investment. So the McKinsey study was very clear about that.
Yeah, I agree with the other speakers. I think because we had some difficult months now, and definitely some difficult days, we shouldn't lose the long-term perspective and the potential of the country. In the, in the way, if somebody goes a little bit more far away and sees the long-term opportunities, you will see a country that is apparently an extremely beautiful and gifted country with a very high level of people, very suitable for tourism, for real estate, for shipping, for the food industry, for many, many things. IT, industry. I mean, there are so many opportunities in this country. It's true that the crisis has created a lot of anxiety, at the same time a lot of opportunities. Let me remind you again that tourism in the last 2 years, for the ones who talk about the drachma, did 3 times better than our Eurozone competitors in the Euro. So it isn't everything so black and bad. We did the 22% growth of last year and the 15% of the year before is 3 times faster than Turkey. And it is 6 times faster than Spain and France and Italy. So definitely we don't do everything wrong, and we shouldn't get into this negative mood because we Greeks are always exaggerating in our happiness, in our negativity, in everything. We should be more cool-minded. Clearly, we are facing a difficult situation, which is a combination of mistakes by the lenders and by the Greek governments, including the one today. Clearly, the long-term solution and the medicine given to Greece 5 years ago was not the proper one. A country cannot adjust so quickly and so intensely in things that have been developed over a long period of time. I think the long term is that after this intensive psychotherapy of the Greek people, soon the Greek people will see the light and they will understand it's only hard work, and we will have really a much more sensible way of seeing things forward. So in the longer term, I remain extremely optimistic about my sector. We invest, I invest, we invest heavily in the sector. We are doing very well in our investments. We are doing really, believe me, far better than competitive countries, including Spain, Turkey, and so on, Italy and France. So it's not really everything as negative as described. We should be cool and we should see things. Of course, we have to have the banks recapitalized and lending money at a logical interest rate. 6 and 7%, you know, is not a rate you can borrow money today. On the other hand, we have to have a framework, a tax framework that is, again, logical. 23 VAT% on accommodation when the competitors are 8, 9, or 10 is not logical as well. I hope they will not make this mistake. But even if they do it, you can be sure in a year they will take it back because they will see the consequences of it. In the longer term, I think the country has wonderful opportunities, and we shouldn't be negative in how we see things today. Thank you.
In this interesting debate between shipping and the rest of the economy, is the economy minister who wants to, Secretary General who wants to respond.
Yes. I think that the gentleman that made this comment or raised the question was quite pessimistic. Of course, I mean, in Greece, we are speaking about the dual economy. On the one hand, we have quite a lot of highly problematic companies, but from the other hand, I mean, we have high-quality companies. There are many successful companies in IT and other sectors that they are very good on a global market, and they are doing very, very well on a global market. What I would like to say is that for a country, I mean, to decide to depend on one sector, that means it's going to be a very volatile country, and I think that nobody wants that. We want to invest and we want to develop on many sectors. We want many sectors to flourish in the country, and we are going to do whatever is possible for that. And I would like to mention that, I mean, in Europe, I mean, recently we realized that sending all the production outside of Europe wasn't the best policy that we raised. So there is a new policy now that speaks about reindustrialization of Europe. That's something that's all embracing, I mean, an economy that's all embracing, not depending on one sector, not depending on services only.
Thank you. Mr. Pazoglou?
Yeah, certainly the shipping sector is a very dynamic sector of our economy. But to my knowledge, and the only country which is their well-being is based on one sector is Norway. I fully agree that we cannot depend on only one sector. I don't want us to leave from here with a pessimistic view that, you know, everything is wrong and we cannot have investments, blah, blah, blah. Don't forget that we're still, after an unprecedented recession in our economy, we're still among the 30, probably 35 richest countries in the world on per capita GDP. We're talking about Russia these days, and we forget that our per capita GDP is much higher than Russia's. Does it mean that we're doing everything right? Obviously not. We did mistakes. To me, the issue is that we need to learn from our mistakes, not to repeat the same mistakes. If we learn from our mistakes, and if we are in a position to create a vision for the next generation, for our children, things will become much, much better. And we have to be optimistic.
Thank you. The lady in the back. Could we have the microphone?
Please, a question, though, not another statement.
I promise. Mr. Papazoglou discussed the importance of education. I'm an educator and a psychologist. I'd like to ask, who is the ideal investor to invest in a partnership in education?
If I understand where the question is, whether we should be having some kind of partnership in education, correct? Foreign partnerships.
Any partnership, someone investing in education.
Okay.
Yes.
I truly believe that, you know, education, the educational system has to be dominated by the state, if you like. Okay. I support certainly the idea that we need to have partnerships in education. We can have private universities as well, assuming that the regulatory framework in the educational system is very strict. So we should not play with education of you know, our population, our children. Because what's happening is that we should not promise them that they can go and get, you know, a diploma, a certificate, who has no value. Therefore, I'm saying the regulatory framework has to be very strict, to ensure even if we have partnerships in the educational system, these partnerships are well run in an environment which is very, very well regulated, to avoid, just diplomas with no value.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you. Dimitris Kalios, I'm with Sigma Catalyst Partners. I have a question mostly addressed to our international guests with regards to the Greek financial system. The fact that right now it's considered a fragile system, and of course, given that many foreign investors have seen their investments being reduced in value over the past months, how does this fragility in the Greek financial system, as well as what happened with bank investments, affect their appetite for new investments in Greece? Thank you.
I think the question was, you have seen a number of investors who have already invested, and obviously they're not particularly happy today with the value of their investments. So is that a detraction for new investors who may want to come in? Am I right? Oh, especially in the Greek financial system.
Oh, you're all involved in the banking system. Stelios, Mr. Zavvos.
There are a lot of hedge funds that have invested in the Greek financial industry. We have Paulson on Alpha Bank Piraeus and ADAP. We have Wilboros in Eurobank and Bank of Cyprus. These people are this very moment wait and expect that following an agreement, most probably we will have a dramatic increase from the bottoms of the stock market, especially the financial sector. Also, they play the strip of the government bonds, and they expect them to increase in value. Now, like in every situation, there are two aspects to look at it. There are a few of the hedge funds which have been circulating in the last few weeks in Athens, and they see it as a buying opportunity. The ones who are in, they feel locked and they expect the increase so they can get out. So it's a very different perspective. But this is for, as we said, the speculative investment, especially in the financial industry. Till we get stability in the aspect of the economy, staying in the Eurozone, having a growth plan, this is going to be a deterrent.
Although we are fine as far as our segment is concerned, we have like almost 9 minutes left. I'm told, rightly so, that there is another, thing coming up, which is Mr. Metropoulos getting an award, which is not just a thing, more than that. So let's try to wrap it up with 2 more questions, maybe. The gentleman here. Okay, 3 are quick. 1, the lady, 2, and then the gentleman in the back. So.
Yes, my name is Nicola Samaras. I have no connection with the previous Prime Minister. I'm a television producer from Europe. Also, there is I know if somebody of this panelist can comment on a little poem given by a Nobel winner, Greek poet Ellis, then I have to say in Greek, όλοι εσείς του κόσμου οι σοφοί, δώστε μου μια απάντηση σωστή. Πού είναι το χρυσό κλειδί, το δικό μας χρυσό κλειδί? Απάντηση πολύβουη σιωπή. Any comment? Thank you.
Thank you. The lady here, I'd like to welcome the mayor of Athens. Mr. Kaminis just got in. The next question is the lady with the blue dress, and then we'll go to the gentleman in the back, and we'll have to wrap it up. Sorry.
My question is about tax. I heard a lot about the tax imposition and the wish to see a flat tax rate or a steady tax rate. But what about the tax collection or the tax enforcement? For many of us who have lived and worked in the US, we know that there is no way messing about with the IRS. How can we see an IRS type of situation in Greece, or a privately maybe funded outsourced solution of an IRS collecting the tax in Greece, or even the private sector funding an initiative of taking the IRS on secondment so that we can finally see a harmonization of the Greek business tax situation?
Thank you. I guess no one would disagree with, is there, okay, go ahead.
Well, I can just very briefly give you an example. You have, I think, if I'm correct, you have, from VAT, you have about 30 billion a year. And you have a tax evasion calculated about 4 to 5 billion. Okay. When I said before initially that you need, taking horizontal measures is the wrong policy, this is exactly what I said, is that now you're discussing today in negotiations hard measures for a couple of billion, and you have 4 billion waiting for you from tax evasion.
I have to apologize, but I'm told that we have to wrap it up. So that's it. I think we enjoyed the panel discussion. I apologize for the tiresome presentation, one panel after the other, but I guess it was worth for the audience. Thank you very much, and we're moving ahead for the next event, which is Ms. Metropoulos.